I'm about to read you a story I wrote about the market for rare Japanese Kit Kats and a strange criminal tale of Kit Kat fraud, cargo theft, shell email accounts, and other confectionery hijinks.
I found Kit Kats from Japan. So let's try them. I got the orange, the melon, and this flavor, I think it's red bean mochi. So cute. All three of these would be like one Kit Kat in the US, but Japan's sizing is so small. It's like snack bites. Like this is actually how much you're supposed to eat.
In the US, Kit Kats are kind of an unremarkable candy. I like them. They're my go-to movie candy or airplane food. My friends who prefer cooler things like Sour Patch Kids often mock me for that. A Kit Kat in the US is not that big of a deal. It's like milk chocolate that's crunchy. It's like $2. But in Japan, there's a whole phenomena around Kit Kats. There are rare Kit Kat flavored drops, like you would have like an album drop or a shoe drop in the United States.
Let's try different Kit Kat flavors from Japan. By the way, you can only get these flavors in Japan, so let's keep this top secret. Okay, let's get into it. First up, we have cheesecake flavor. This is the color. It smells a lot like cheesecake, and I love cheesecake.
Have you had any of the Japanese Kit Kat flavors? I haven't seen any of these flavors. Pudding, maple, cookies and cream, hojicha, which is a roasted green tea, mint, sakura, which
people will travel to a different city. They spend kind of a lot of money to get the rare flavors online. They trade stories about them. They try them together. Kit Kat in Japanese sounds a little bit like a way that you would wish someone good luck. Kitokatsu. So a lot of times Kit Kats are given as a gift before an exam or a pitch or even like a wedding. I've been aware of this phenomena of Kit Kat fandom for a long time, but I really dug into it this summer. I learned about this kooky incident that took Kit Kat fanaticism to the next level. What I followed was the most frustrating string of emails that I have truly ever read in my life. When 2 truckloads of limited edition, fancy, expensive Kit Kats went missing. I am not going to tell you the ending, but what I will say is that even though this story seems like it's about funny Japanese Kit Kat enthusiasm, it's actually about a huge cargo theft problem in the United States, which is growing and is costing about $30 billion in losses every year, at least according to the FBI. I will take away from this story, personally, that behind everything that's just a little bit off, there might be a whole world of crime and deception and fraud and shell email accounts that you won't know unless you pull on the thread. So here's my story on the Great Kit Kat Caper of 2023. It has certainly changed how I see Kit Kats, and maybe it'll change how you see Kit Kats too. Danny Tang's 55,000 Kit Kats began their long, twisted, and sometimes obscure journey in Japan. Mr. Tang is the founder of Boxu, a New York company that sells Japanese snacks in subscription boxes, and he intended to make a tidy sum by flipping the sweets stateside. The Kit Kat shipment, which included sought-after flavors like melon, matcha latte, and daifuku mochi, had cost $110,000, but Boxu expected to make about $250,000 in total revenue. "You can fit a lot of Kit Kats in 2 containers," he said. And they are a booming business. In Japan, enthusiasts clamor for the rarer flavors, with some sold for just a few weeks or only in a specific region. In the United States, obsessives fawn over the collectibles, comparing reviews on Japanese snack blogs and shelling out for limited editions. These particular Kit Kats would become the key players in an ultimately frustrating saga of shell email accounts, phantom truckers, supply chain fraud, and one seriously bewildered cargo freight broker. Interviews and emails shared with the New York Times tell the story of just one instance of strategic theft, a growing corner of the criminal world that the FBI has said accounts for some $30 billion in losses a year, with food being among the top targets. The precious sweets landed safely enough in California and were trucked about 30 miles across Los Angeles County to a temporary storage facility in South El Monte, run by a company called Japan Crate Acquisition. After weeks of chugging across the vast Pacific, they just needed to make the remaining leg of their journey to Boxu's warehouse in Carlstadt, New Jersey, and then into the hands of avid candy fans. That's where Shane Black came in. Mr. Black, who runs a freight brokering company called Freight Rate Central in Sarasota, Florida, is part of an invisible army of professionals who coordinate and marshal the fleets of trucks that crisscross the country, carrying everything from chickens to smartphones. For this job, Boxu would pay him about $13,000. Mr. Black got to it. He posted the job on a trucking board that is something like a Craigslist for freight. Someone named Tristan with HCH Trucking accepted the job, though he was using a Gmail account, and said he would have the shipment picked up shortly. On August 9th, Tristan wrote in an email, "Hey man, the first one is loaded and rolling. The second one will pick it up tomorrow, first thing in the morning." There was nothing out of the ordinary, Mr. Black said in an interview. When the shipments failed to reach New Jersey days after any cross-country trip should have been completed, Mr. Black started to have visions of Kit Kats melting in the summer heat. "Please tell me the freight is in good order and has been refrigerated this whole time," he emailed Tristan. Tristan replied that one of the trucks had broken down in Washington, Pennsylvania, a small city just southwest of Pittsburgh. Tristan reassured him that the Kit Kats were cool and intact, but if it's not fixed today, we will have to head back to the shipper and re-unload them there. That sent up all kinds of red flags for Mr. Black. If the truck was in good enough shape to drive the 2,400 miles back to California, why couldn't it make it fewer than 400 miles to New Jersey? So Mr. Black called HCH Trucking. "That's when everything kind of hit the fan," he said. When he reached the HCH headquarters in Jersey City, he heard chaos in the background, sounds of panic. The representative told him that their information appeared to have been compromised. They had never heard of any Tristan. If Mr. Black wasn't dealing with HCH Trucking, who was he dealing with? And most important, where were the 6 figures worth of Kit Kats? Seemingly on cue, Tristan followed up. "Time for some coming clean," he confessed. "I'm actually a scammer, and the owner of HCH doesn't have anything to do with this." "Why, though?" Mr. Black replied plaintively. "What would you stand to gain? Can I please get access to the loads so I can get them to New Jersey? We're not a big company at all. It's just me. I'm the owner, and everything else." Tristan wrote back, "We're trying to make money, sir. I told you, we're scammers. Really sorry, I didn't know your story, and hopefully the loads get to New Jersey." Tristan included the addresses of 2 warehouses, both just east of Los Angeles, where he had dropped the loads. The strange thing was that Mr. Black had never paid Tristan any money. The shipping fee was due on delivery. If this was a con, so far it didn't seem to be a very profitable one. In any case, Mr. Black couldn't believe his luck. "When I found out that they were at a cold storage facility, I was just so happy," he said. "I thought, okay, we got the freight." Mr. Black spun back into action. According to Tristan, one load was at Inland Empire Cold Storage in Jurupa Valley, California. The other was nearby at Anytime Crossdock in Ontario, California. Tristan then went silent and did not respond to repeated emails from the Times seeking comment. Anytime was eager not only to get the load out of its warehouse, but to be paid for nearly 2 weeks of storage. It turned out that the Kit Kats had never left California. They had simply been driven 30 miles east, put on ice, and left to rack up storage fees. "We would like to know when you're going to get this picked up," Anytime wrote, "as we anticipated this to be a short-term storage request." The outstanding balance for the storage was $3,830. Mr. Black said he paid $2,000 of that out of his own pocket to secure the release of the freight, with the promise to pay the rest later. Anytime did not respond to repeated requests for comment from the Times. Daunted but determined, he started the process over, posting the job again on the freight board. This time, he said he got a bite from Manny at MVK Transport, Inc. According to Mr. Black, Manny had the Kit Kats picked up. At least this half of the shipment was on its way to New Jersey, Mr. Black believed. After a few days, though, communications turned spotty. "I've been writing you for days now," Mr. Black emailed a few days later. "I called yesterday and you hung up, and now your phone says it's out of service." The next morning, he followed up, now furious. "How do you make money on this? Are you going to sell Kit Kats on the corner?" He'd been had again. This time, the Kit Kats had disappeared for good into the expanse of Southern California's freeway land. Requests for comment sent to MVK went unanswered. Inland Cold Empire Storage, at least, still had the other half of the Kit Kats. And Mr. Black, by now frantic to salvage what he could of the candy, was still on the case. "This load was stolen from us and placed in your storage facility," he wrote to Inland on August 21st. Inland replied that its contract was with a man named Harry Senta. "There is no Harry," Mr. Black explained. Baksu, CC'd on the email, was the rightful owner. "Harry is a fictitious name." Harry Senta, however, is not a fictitious name. Harry Senta lives in Ohio and works in shipping. But the entire Kit Kat affair was news to him. "This is totally fraudulent and not me," Mr. Senta said in an email to the Times. "Good luck and hope they find the Kit Kats. LOL." Nevertheless, Inland was unmoved. "Without proof that you are the rightful owner and payment for storage, we cannot release the freight." Mr. Black said he reached out to the sheriff's departments of Riverside and San Bernardino counties, but said he was told jurisdictional issues kept them from getting involved, and no reports were filed. He also turned to the team at Baksu. Did they have anything that he could use to prove their ownership? But Baksu had essentially fired Mr. Black in the meantime, stopped payment on his fee, filed a report with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department for insurance purposes, and decided to move on. The Kit Kats were dead to them. "I don't know if I would be comfortable selling these to customers," said Mr. Tang, Baksu's founder. "What if something actually happens to customers that eat this and we get sued?" Meanwhile, the Kit Kats are still at Inland, according to the company's chief executive, Kevin Sakalis. "We have no use for this product and would happily release it to anyone who would show proof of proper ownership and pay the storage fees," Mr. Sakalis wrote in an email to the Times. The Baksu Kit Kats are just one instance of an increasingly common computer-based form of fraud that some experts call fictitious pickups or strategic theft. It's part identity theft, part extortion. The freight, sometimes called a hostage load, can vanish if the extortion demands are not met. "The more you unpeel the onion, the worse it gets," said Keith Lewis, the vice president of operations at CargoNet, which is part of global data analytics and technology provider Verisk. He said that strategic cargo theft is up 700% this year. "The supply chain is moving at the speed of light," he said, adding, "The bad guys are playing chess and we're playing checkers. We're 2 or 3 steps behind them." As for Baksu, its insurance claim has been denied, so the blame is now flowing backward along that supply chain. Baksu holds Mr. Black responsible. "He fell for an obvious scam," they said, and the Gmail addresses should have been a red flag. Mr. Black said truckers don't always use company domains. Ultimately, he blames Japan Crate Acquisition, which originally released the Kit Kats to Tristan. "Obviously, it didn't go to an HCH truck," Mr. Black said, "and whoever loaded the shipment should have been suspicious." In possibly the strangest twist on the Kit Kat trail, Baksu announced in September that it had acquired Japan Crate. But the Times discovered that the acquisition had actually been completed back in June. So Baksu, through a wholly owned subsidiary, had, in effect, overseen the loading of its own Kit Kats onto the original 2 fraudulent trucks. "I've been doing this for over 2 decades now, and I've never come across anything like this, anything of this magnitude," Mr. Black said. "It's beyond crazy. It really is, because there's no answers." "I do feel cheated," he added. I just don't know who is doing the cheating.